We're delighted to be joined here at Sustainability Live by Maureen Bray of 3 Degrees. I wanted just to begin with Maureen, if you could just introduce yourself, what you do at 3 Degrees and who your customers are.
Happy to. Thank you. So I lead our energy and climate practice at 3 Degrees Europe within our strategy division. And 3 Degrees is an organization that supports our clients and their customers to take urgent action against climate change.
Thank you. And so you've just been involved in a fascinating panel discussion on Scope 3 and ESG, subtitled, is it all our problem? Is it?
I think it's fair to say that it is. It's all our problem. It's up to governments to set the right policy, to level set. It's up to consumers to make the right decisions. It's up to corporates to, work with their supply chains and work with their suppliers to make sure that they're decarbonizing as much as they can.
Of course, Scope 3 emissions notoriously hard for organisations to tackle. You made one point during the panel discussion that it's important for businesses who are looking to make progress on that front, not to get bogged down in details. What did you mean by that exactly?
It's important to get into the details eventually, but it shouldn't hinder progress. So what I meant with that was they should start somewhere. And if that is simply undertaking a screen to assess what's material to them as an organization in terms of their supply chain and which categories are most material to their organization, then that's enough. Get started and do something about it. And then once that data starts coming in and once more data is achieved and there's better transparency and access to data, that's when, getting into the details is important.
Now, your mention of data there takes us into the area of being able to measure what progress you're making or not making in the area of Scope 3. But how do companies know what to measure exactly?
So what do they need to measure really comes down to that screening process that I mentioned. So a Scope 3 screening exercise will establish which categories within the 15 categories of Scope 3 are relevant and most important to that organization. So where do the bulk of the emissions sit? So it's important to establish where the emissions sit, which suppliers account for those emissions, and starting with those top suppliers that will have the biggest impact, how does an organization work with them to gain better data if it's not already available to them from those suppliers?
Now, of course, some multinational companies might have a value chain numbering thousands, if not tens of thousands of vendors. You also mentioned how important collaboration is in making progress on the journey to net zero. But what does that collaboration look like on the ground?
So this is where I think meaningful and successful action can really take place, is when suppliers are engaged by multiple parties. So there's mutual supply chain within industries. So, for example, peers or competitors getting together to collectively work with their mutual supply chain will have greater impact. There's a collective power or additional pressure that either supports or encourages action to take place amongst those suppliers.
Of course, the further down the supply chain you go, down to sort of tiers 3, 4, 5, and beyond that, probably the closer to the raw materials you're getting, probably the further away from the developed world you're getting. What can large organizations do to help their vendors in poorer countries along the Scope 3 emissions journey?
So investment in the form of carbon insetting, for example, if there is the visibility there, and there is the traceability specifically to be able to invest and support in decarbonization efforts. There's also the opportunity to, if there isn't that traceability, working with a specific supply shed. So if an organization knows that their material is coming from a general region, then it's about taking action to support that region to lower emission factors. Now that won't just help that one corporate. That will help any other organizations that are using that supply shed as well. And that is where that collective action can really be useful.
Maureen Bray, 3 Degrees, thank you very much for your time.